Okay, so all our code is up on GitHub. We've designed our models. We've included the relationships, the one-to-many kind of parent-child nature of our relationships. So we're going to work in two files here that we haven't worked with yet. The first one you'll notice is under our data folder. In here, we've got this file called Applicationdb Context. This is a database connection class that's here. Not exactly sure where this line of code came from. You probably don't have that in here. So what we need to do now is make global references to our models for use with our database connection. So we've got 5 models that we've created, right? We can see them all open: order detail, cart item, pet, order, and category. We want to build tables in our database and then work with those tables through this database connection object. So we're going to use a class built into ASP.NET called dbSet. When I type dbSet, Visual Studio gives me this little prompt. It's part of Entity Framework Core. Entity Framework is the library we use to connect our web application to our database. And it's got this class called the dbSet that can be used to write queries and save data. So this object means it's something we can use for doing create, read, update, and delete operations in the database. So we don't actually have to write any SQL commands at all when we work with these dbSets. The SQL commands are actually built right into these objects. So we're going to create 5 dbSet objects. The first one will be a dbSet of our category model that I'll call categories plural. I want to create 4 more of these, one for each of our other models: order, pet, cart item, and order detail. So these objects are going to have built-in methods we can call for create, read, update, and delete. So these objects will allow us to change the data in our database. So what else did we have? Yes, you will need the import statement. I'm not sure why mine was actually there already. But yes, Jordan, thanks for that. You will need the import statement. So I'll have our pets and our cart item. We'll do each one of these. So the model name is singular, but the dbSet itself will make plural. So there are our 5 dbSet objects, one for each one of our 5 models. And we do need to reference the models So we are almost ready now to build the tables in our database. I will throw this in the chat. So in your assignment, you'll need to define these DB set objects as well. You'll make your models. You might only have like 2 models, which is fine. And then each model you'll declare as a DB set in this Applicationdb Context class. We need to add one more line of code now so our web application can talk to the database. And that line of code is our database connection string. And I'm going to show you 2 ways, 2 different types. We might have a local connection, or we might have a connection to an Azure database. And I'll show you both of these and where they go. So the file we're going to need is our appsettings.json file. And in line 3, there is a connection string here that's called default connection. If I go to my project and we open up down here in the root, there's appsettings.json. So if we open that up, you'll see on line 3, here's our default connection. And it gives us, right now, this is just like an in-memory database. So we need to replace this value here with one of a couple of options. The first option, and I'm going to do it in both, try it in both places. If you're using Windows authentication and your local server, the connection string looks like this. Server equals, and your local computer name. The database equals, and you'll put in positive pets as the database name. And then integrated security equals true. So that means Windows authentication, we don't need a separate username and password. So I'm going to try this version out first. If our database is on Azure, which you'll be doing for your assignment, your database connection is going to look a little different. The server name will be the one you create on Azure, which will end in database.windows.net. Then you'll put in your database name. And then instead of this integrated security is true, this only works on your laptop locally. To connect to your live database, you need to put in the username and password in the connection string. So I'm going to try both versions of this. So I'm going to take out what's here. And first I'm going to use my local database. So my server is my computer name, which I never remember. HPDX3. So you can find your server name if you're connected to your local server. It'll just show it right here in Management Studio. My database that I made last week at the end of class is called Positive Pets. And I will use integrated security equals true. So meaning use just my Windows login. I don't have a separate username and password. So if you are connecting to a local database, your connection string should be the same as mine. The only thing will be different will be you'll just replace my computer name with your own. This server name will not work for you. It only works for me. So I'm going to do this twice. I'm going to connect to my local database and build my tables. Then I'll change my connection string and I'll do it in my Azure database as well. So I can use either one. So we've done all of this setup so that we can get here. We're going to use this tool called database migrations. And migrations allow us to build our tables in the database based on the models in Visual Studio. So we've done this, we've created the models that have our primary key fields, and we've added the models to our model names to our Applicationdb context. So then we're going to follow these steps. We're going to open this little window called the Package Manager console. It's basically like a Windows PowerShell window in Visual Studio. We're going to add a migration, which we'll talk about what that is. And then we're going to call update database. That's actually going to execute this code in the database. And there's a link here for more details on how this works. I'll throw it in the chat. These slides are available on Blackboard, but we're going to walk through this process together. So I'm going to click on Tools and go to my NuGet Package Manager, and then the first option in that submenu is the Package Manager console. So follow this little menu tree from Tools to NuGet Package Manager to the Package Manager console, and a little window is going to open at the bottom of your Visual Studio. We can see it's initializing PowerShell. So I'm going to run the command add migration. So we're migrating, we're copying code from Visual Studio into our database. And we have to give our migration a name. It's kind of like a git commit. We're describing the changes we're making. So I'll say create first tables. And there should be no spaces here. So add dash migration. And then I'm just going to hit enter. Tries to compile the site. Yes, Jordan, integrated security are 2 words. I get a few warnings here, which I can ignore. And now notice I have this new tab open up here. It's got the current date and time, an underscore, and then the name I added, createfirsttables.cs. So it generates this C# file. And if we look at it, what's happening here? So what's going on? What is this code instruction going to do? Starting on line 10. What's happening in this file? Yeah, exactly, Jordan Tushar, thank you. It's writing a script that's going to build the tables. And notice it also includes our foreign keys, all of our relationships. So we've created the script with this add migration. This was this step. The next step is to run this command, update database. This command will actually execute the script in our database. So I'll go back to my Package Manager console. I'm going to run the command update dash database. Now, if your database connection string here is not right, then this is going to fail. And inevitably, for somebody, this won't work properly, but I'm going to try it. So the new command is update dash database and hit enter, and we'll see what happens. So So it compiles my site again. I get a few warnings. But so long as nothing's red, that's a good sign. I'll cross my fingers and hope. Okay. Not quite. So I got an error. That's okay. Why did this not work? So it tried to connect to my database. Failed. Did I specify the name properly? GC7QH. I got my server name wrong. So it tried to connect and failed. That's okay. So what I need to do is fix my connection string. And I'll just try to run the update database command a second time. That's okay that it failed. No big deal. Try update database. Okay, so now it says it was done. So it runs quite quickly. So how do I know if this actually worked? I can come back to my management studio. If I look in my positive pets and tables, we can see now I have a pets table, orders, order details, categories, and cart items. So all 5 of the models are now here with all the columns and keys that we set up in our model. So the migration copies our models to the database and includes any relationships between them. Now you may notice one other thing about my list of tables. And David, I'm going to come back to a question you raised earlier about the customer ID. So we had 5 models in the project. I've got 5 tables, but I've also got all these other tables. What are these other tables and why did they get built? We didn't create these models for ASP.NET users, roles. What do you suppose these tables are and where do they come from?
I'm lost.
Okay. So I ran my migration here, right? We have 5 models. Cart item, we have the 5 model classes we made. And when we finished our migration, I have each one of these got built as a table in the database. But I have all these other tables here too. We didn't build any models for these. So let's look at where these tables came from.
Excuse me. I think I'm far behind.
Okay. Okay.
So
well, I am recording this. If you do need help, then feel free to book an appointment and I can help you catch up one-on-one. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
You can also watch the video later and try to go back, but if you still need help, by all means, reach out to me. Okay? Yeah, so Tushar, yeah, these are all the things for users. Remember when we set up our project, we changed authentication from none to individual user accounts. Inside the data folder, here's the migration file we just made, right? Here's our create first tables with our script. But there's another file here called create identity schema. And in here, Visual Studio created a bunch of tables for user authentication and authorization.
Oh,
So all these tables start with the words ASP.NET. We're not going to use them yet, but we're going to use these in a few weeks when we start implementing security.
oh, do you know where CyberShell is? I need to type it.
Sorry, how to get, do you mean to the package manager console? This window here?
No, the PowerShell. I need to like type in
Yeah. So you click on Tools,
tools.
NuGet Package Manager,
Yes.
and this Package Manager console.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So then you'll run the add migration and update database commands.
Okay. Create tables. It says the term is not recognized to CDM function, script file, or operatable program. Check the spelling of the name, verify that the path is correct, and try again.
Yep, so it needs to be add dash migration, and then
Add migration.
and then something like this. I'm putting it in the chat. You can see it on my screen.
ASP.NET. 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 No, it's not working for some reason.
Okay, so we may need to look at it together another time. I'm available tomorrow morning if you'd like me to have a look then. So
Okay,
what I'll do, Chris, I will upload the recordings later today. So feel free to watch again on the recordings and make sure the commands you're using are the same. And if you're having a problem, let me know and we can meet tomorrow morning online.
Okay, thank you.
So I have the tables in my database. So David, I want to come back to your question earlier about why is customer ID a string? So the table that Microsoft gives us for storing the customers or the users is this ASP.NET users table. And if we look at it, whoops, I guess I should look at it this way. It actually uses a 450 character string for the IDs. So this is why our user ID can be a string and not an integer, because we're going to use this table. But we're not going to get into that for a few weeks yet. So I'm connected up here to my local database, and I've used the migration to build the tables in the database. So this works for my pet store when I'm using my local database. I'm also going to show how to connect to my Azure database. What's up, Kathleen? Oops. So I'm going to change my connection string now, and I'm going to do this process again, but this time, instead of connecting locally, I'm going to connect to my Azure database, because for your assignment, you'll need your database running on Azure. So here's my local database. On my local server, I now have all these tables here. In my Azure database, if I click on tables, it's empty. So I'm going to repeat this process, but connect to my Azure database. So I'm just going to modify my credentials here. My server this is the server I created last week. The database name is the same. And I've got to replace this integrated security equals true. This only works on my laptop. So now I'm going to put in the user space ID and the password that I set up last week in the Azure portal. I can now run the update database command, and it's going to run the migrations again, but this time it's going to use my Azure database instead of my local one. So if I run update database, the migration runs. And if I refresh my list of tables here, I've now got an exact copy. So I have all the same tables on my local server, as well as in the Azure database. Now for in class, well, I'll just leave it for right now. I'll probably want to use my local database in class because it's faster. But for now, good enough. So now my tables are finally built. I know that was a lot of work to design our models, build the relationships, run them, connect the database, and run the migration. We only have to do this stuff once. So we're going to do 2 more quick things today with the time we have left. Somebody asked the question in class on Tuesday, well, if we've built the tables based on our models, what happens if we need to make a change? So we want to add a field, or maybe we want some kind of like a new validation rule in our model that we don't have. So let's look at our order model. We've got a city here. City is required. In the database, we go and look at our city column, and it's set to maximum characters, which I think in SQL Server is like 8,000. We say, well, wait a minute, we don't want, we only want, let's say, 50 characters per city. So what do? We've already built the table now. Can we change it? Yes, we'll go ahead and make a little change in the table, and then we just make a new migration and execute it again. And this will modify the database. So in the order model, for city, I'm going to set max length as 50. So now we've got this mismatch. The model only allows 50 characters, but the database is allowing like the maximum number. So I'm going to add a new migration that will copy this change from Visual Studio to the database. So add migration, order, city. I'll just put in a description. I'm going to set the length to 50. So this will build a new little C# file for me here. And then if I run the update database command, that command will get executed. So it creates another new script file with the command to alter the city column in the orders table and change the max length to 50. Right? So the old type was nvarchar max. The new type is going to be nvarchar 50. So now I want to update this by running update-database. And then I can hit refresh down here and notice my city now shows as 50 characters maximum. So we can use the migrations not only to build our tables, but also to update them if the requirements and the needs of our web application change. So we'll probably have to make some more adjustments to these models and the table structure through the course, which is fine. If we change the model, we'll make a new migration to make sure our database stays in sync. We don't want to have to delete and recreate tables that might have data in them that we want to keep. We've done a lot of work today. We've come to the best part. We've got a categories controller here. Just close a few things up. I actually want to delete the categories controller that we've built and the categories views that we've built. And we're going to regenerate them using Visual Studio. So I'm going to delete my categories controller. And under views, I'm also going to delete the categories subfolder. So now my only controller is the home controller. And under views, we just have the original home and shared folders. I'm going to right-click controllers and click Add a Controller. Sorry, I don't understand your question. Could you be more specific?
I can't believe you deleted it.
That's okay, because you know what, Chris? I have them on GitHub. So if we need them, right, they're always here. We're deleting them because we're going to rebuild better ones. But they're always here, right? So if I want to go back and see them, I can always go back to the previous lesson. Don't worry, right? I can browse at this point in time. So never fear. This is one of the great things about GitHub.
Okay.
Right? Our code is archived, so we can always go and retrieve the old code.
Okay.
Don't panic.
Thank you.
So when we created the controller before, we used this empty mod, this MVC controller empty. And Chris, you'll see in a minute why we're going to delete and recreate it. We don't want an empty controller. We want an MVC controller with views that use the Entity Framework library for data access. And if you read in this little window on the right, it's going to give us an MVC controller with actions and views to create, read, update, delete, and list. So we want this instead. It's better. And then just click the Add button. Okay, so choose this third option that's highlighted in blue. MVC controller with views using Entity Framework, click Add. And then we get this little pop-up window. It asks us to choose a model. So we're going to use our category model. For the data context, we're going to pick, we only have one data context. It's this Applicationdb Context. And we're going to check off all three of these boxes. We want Visual Studio to build the views, we want it to reference our JavaScript, and we want it to use our default layout. And the file name should automatically get populated as categories controller plural. So the only thing you should really have to pick here is the model. I'll leave my screen up for a second. When you've selected all these options, click Add. Visual Studio is going to scaffold. It's going to auto-generate a controller and 5 views. So we'll let this run for a minute. We get a categories controller, and it has a bunch of methods here. An index method, details method, 2 create methods, 2 edit methods, and 2 delete methods. If I look over here in Solution Explorer, notice under Views, our categories folder's back, but there's now 5 files inside it with descriptive names: create, delete, details, edit, and index. Just going to build my solution. Oops, I'll just start my server again. And now click Categories, and look what we get. A page with a link to create a category. And when we click it, we get a form. So now we can start using these auto-generated views and controller methods to put categories into our database. So what are some categories of pets we should sell? Okay, that's certainly going to be popular. So I can add dogs. And now dog shows up in my list. I can click Edit, brings me to an edit form. I can click Delete, ask if I'm sure I want to delete this. What other categories should we have in the pet store? What else do we want besides dogs? Okay, we can do birds. I could do rodents. Reptiles. Our form also contains validation already, right? If I try to save a blank category, remember this required attribute we put in our category model, this prevents me from saving an empty one. So if I go back to my database, if I want to see the list of categories here, I could just right-click my table and choose, hey, let's select the top 1,000 rows. And here's the data. Dogs are ID 1, birds, rodents, and reptiles. So by creating that MVC controller with views, Visual Studio's built all this working code to do our create, read, update, and delete. It has all the C# code in the controller and all of the views we need. Right? So we could also edit things. So all of these views and controller methods are fully functional. So Chris, do you see now why I deleted the controller we made?
Yes.
So let's make one more. Let's do this also for pets. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio and we'll repeat this exact same process. I'm going to right-click my controllers. I'm going to add a controller. And again, I want this same option, MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. So choose that third option and click the Add button. We only have to do one thing on this screen. What do we need to do on this little pop-up window? Thank you, Jordan. This time we're going to choose the pet model. Everything else is going to stay the same. The controller name is automatically going to be called Pets with an S, Pets Controller. So just choose the pet model and click Add. We'll let the scaffolding process run. And then we can go and we've got a controller. And now we've got 5 views for pets. Cool. Okay, if you have a build error, if you click Build and Build Solution, you should get an error showing up that you can click on, and it'll take you right to the line with that error, which you may need a little help from me in debugging. If you're able to build your pet controller, we should now be able to go to localhost/pets, and we get a pet index with all our headings. So let's try to save a pet. You'll notice our pet ID, our primary key, it's hidden. Right? Visual Studio knows it's auto-generated. So let's put in a pet name here. Okay, give me a dog name we want to put in here. Okay, we got Sam. Jennifer, what color is Sam? Okay, so Sam is orange. How old is Sam? Okay, category? What kind of pet is Sam? I'm guessing orange. Oh, okay, we didn't actually add cat. So we'll add Sam after. We'll have to add cats to the categories. Okay, we could do a bird. Yep, we can add cat. We can add whatever you like. It's your site, right? So feel free to add anything you like. We could, cat, we'll do your hamster next. A price, how much for Sam? What's Sam going for? Okay, $250. And notice, so we got this drop down. So how did it know to build the category drop down? Right? It knows not only are we creating a pet, but every pet belongs to a category. Where did this drop down come from? We did something, so Visual Studio knew that every pet belonged to a category. You got it. So not only the foreign key, so I'll create Sam. And notice it shows in the list, and it even shows the category name here. Because this is why our models were so important. We said every category could have many pets, and one pet had a parent category. So when we build this relationship in the models, we automatically get those drop-down lists in our forms. Okay, cat, let's add your hamster. What's your maybe you could put in the chat the values, name, color, age for your hamster. We'll add that to the store as well. And then I think we'll stop for today. We've done a lot. If it's faster than typing, you can even just flip your mic on and tell us what the hamster looks like here. Okay, she's orange. What's her name, Kat? And how old is she? Perfect name for fall, the orange shirt day. Okay, so maybe we'll put in one. And her price, so she'd be a rodent. And how much would she be? Okay. All right. So notice it saves. Again, we can go in and edit. It automatically defaults to the right category. So these pages, these views that are scaffolded, they're not perfect. There's probably a number of ways we can improve them, but they're functional. This is a starting point. And in your assignment, I want you to scaffold your controllers and views. So you don't have to build these automatically. You can, the only part you have to build manually are your model classes. like we did today. So you need to build the models and figure out the relationships between your models. Once you do that, and you add your database connection, and your DB sets in here, you'll run your migration to build your tables. And then you can just scaffold out the controllers and views. Let Visual Studio write all the code and build all your views for you. And then you can just kind of polish these. So that's what we're going to do in next week's class. We're going to work with the pages that we scaffolded today, and we're going to make these better. They're functional, but they're not great. They're not like something we would hand over to a client at this stage, for many obvious reasons. Okay, that brings us to the end for today. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to upload my code to GitHub. So if you want to see the older code, you can always go into the commit history. Yeah, so there's 2 steps to the migration. It's right here. So these slides are on Blackboard for you to reference. Okay, so right here, there's the week 4 slides. It's got in here everything we did today. So the sample connection strings are here on slide 8. And the migration instructions are right here on slide number 10. So it's add-migration, and then a space, and then you just put in some description. What changes are you making to the database? And then you just run the update-database command. Okay, and I've even told you how to get to the Package Manager console through Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and Package Manager console. Okay, so this is here for you to reference, because you may not remember all of it from today. Okay, so you may want to download this slide deck because it has these instructions here, and you'll need them for your assignment. So I will upload all the code to GitHub now. Excuse me. Lot of changes. Lesson 4, final. Scaffold, controllers, and views. So keep in mind, this has my database connection, and I've taken out the password. So if you borrow the code, you'll need to use your own database. All right, folks. I anticipate a number of you will need help. That's totally fine. This is probably the most advanced but most important lesson of the course. So it's important that if you need some help, email me for help, or please make an appointment for office hours. So I don't have any scheduled hours tomorrow morning, but I am available. So if you want some help, send me an email and we can set up a time. I also have office hours Tuesday morning that you can book. So next week, we're going to look at cleaning these controller methods and views up. How do we improve them? So we will work on that next week. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you all for your participation time today, your patience. I will upload the recordings later today, and if you need help, just reach out to me. But I will have to sign off for now because I have another meeting I have to get to shortly. Have a great week. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next Thursday. Don't forget, there's also the feedback survey on Blackboard for you to look at.